Adventure Ho, Illumineers, and welcome back to another episode of Ducktail Dads. We are late, but we are not out for the count. We just had a little bit of delay. I mean, it's a holiday week. Just like the government, we're a day late in everything we're doing this week. I am joined tonight just by Mac. Nathaniel has the night off, as we are off schedule, obviously. And Mac has a great update because I was unfortunately not able to join in, but there was a gathering of sorts at Mac's house last evening, and they had a blast. So, Mac, let's just hit it on the top of the show. What's new in your world?
Yeah, you alluded to the in-person gathering that we had with our friend group. It was my turn to host, and very glad, and I love hosting just friends in general, so we had a good time. We'll get more into, I think, the gameplay specifically on the kind of the next segment here, but overall, that was a really fun experience, and that was definitely like the Lorcana highlight of the week was getting to play in person. It's always nice to kind of like shuffle the cardboard in your hands and get that practice because it matters rather than just, using an online client or what have you. I like that turn-based process with the cards in your hand truly makes a difference, and especially just around the corner, we have set champ prep, and getting used to that time limit is very key. So it was very nice to have that practice in person. Other thing Lorcana related that I enjoyed for what's new in my world was I followed a little bit of some of the Infinity events over the weekend. I know there was a big Citrus Clash in San Diego, and previous guest of the pod, JDZ, as well as Rebecca Quests, they were there casting. So it was really nice after following a conversation, within the last month or two, having them on the podcast and some previous episodes. Like now knowing a little bit more of their background, watching the stream and kind of knowing a little bit what style they like to do and what they want to highlight in a broadcast. It was really cool to have a little bit of that insider knowledge and watching it, play out in a stream setting. So that was really fun. Non-Lorcana related, yes, you alluded to we are on the heels, or we had just passed Memorial Day weekend. So an extra day of chaos in our household with our two boys for sure. It was a fantastic weekend, though. The weather was really nice. We were definitely taking advantage of things outside. We attended a birthday party for a friend and their little one. But primarily, my wife and I started some yard work activities and definitely have the blisters on my hand to prove it with all the shoveling and raking that we've done. I bought a chainsaw, too, so that was really exciting as a guy just operating a chainsaw. So overall, really good weekend. We're working on our fire pit in the backyard, so we had to clear some dirt and level some ground, and it is truly as exciting as it sounds. Just kidding. But my boys, they were playing in their little pool that they had and playing in the sprinklers, so they were very much preoccupied, which was awesome. But right now, it's like super hot, and it is 95 degrees in Minnesota right now. It went from a beautiful 80 over the past weekend to nearly topping out at 100. And this recording tonight was a little sketchy. I texted you, Ryan, like 2.5 hours ago saying, it's way too hot and our power is out. Our power went out, and I don't know, maybe I can work something on a laptop, but thankfully, within about an hour, the power went back on, and we're good to go, and the house is now cooled down again in this heat, and I think we got everything figured out. So a lot going on in my world, both Lorcana and non-Lorcana related. But I'm going to pass it off to you, Ryan. You had a lot of fun stuff happening in the last week, I hear. So what's new in your world?
Thanks, Mac. Thanks for the update. Sounds like it was a very busy weekend and a very busy week so far. We, on our side, had a busy weekend as well. We traveled to go see some friends in Virginia, in the state of Virginia. So that was a blast to go see them after not being able to see them for a while. Bringing the kids along so they can hang out and interact with them. Everybody had a blast. The weather was not quite as warm as it is here, or it was here. It was more like 60s and 70s and overcast, and some sunshine poked through, mostly drizzling rain all weekend, but it was like perfect weather to like exist, basically. We had plenty of activities for the kids to enjoy when the kids took naps. Then we played some games and we watched some shows together and just kind of caught up in general. After not seeing people for a couple of years, it's nice to have some extra downtime packed into a long weekend to spend the time together, hang out, enjoy each other's company, and just kind of catch up, really. With that in mind, not much Lorcana happened over the weekend for me, so biggest Lorcana update is just tracking along with some of the CCQs and playing some online games. You mentioned actually shuffling up cardboard and getting the feel of cards in your hands again, and it truly is second to none, right? There's nothing that really beats the feeling of there's somebody across the table and I'm just shuffling my cards and we're going to draw cards and play the cards, and playing the physical game really is the pinnacle of the experience, and for all intents and purposes. But virtual games are kind of a good filler when there is some minimal downtime and minimal ability to kind of travel and get out. So I've been filling my time with that when I'm able to get some games in here and there, and then kind of tweak a list with Set Champs just 10 days away. 10 days until Set Champ starts. That's insane in my mind. It'll be a blast. I think it's a 5-week Set Champ period as well, because I think it trickles into the 4th of July weekend as well. We'll see how many events actually happen that weekend, but it is happening. So Set Champs is right around the corner, and I'm getting really excited to get back in person with some people in the community again and play some more Lorcana. So that'll be core constructed, right? Set Championships is core constructed. This weekend there was some pretty big Infinity tournaments, and I think should we start? Do you want to start there, or do you want to update the masses on the gameplay that you experienced in person?
Let's do the gameplay, since we kind of hinted at that, the in-person gathering. And especially with, Set Champs, holy cow, it is truly here, and that's what we're going to be playing next. I will say the one thing that was a little bit, the only bummer, besides you not being there, was that we really didn't open packs. We had one trove out of the 4 of us, which I think was very much a missed opportunity. I think we need to kind of make it or set a standard where we at least need to divide up a booster box amongst all of us to get that thrill of opening packs, because we don't do it very much. We're very much we'll buy booster boxes when we see fit, but we seek out singles for the most part and trying to fill in the gaps of our decks. So when we do get to open packs, it's really fun. And we've had a lot of luck in our gatherings recently on opening those packs. But maybe it was a good thing, because it's usually you that has all the luck and you weren't there. So we did have
next time, I promise I will bring the pack luck, and I'm always up for some more pack openings. It's always a fun time to rip open some, or struggle to rip open the cellophane and then flip through the cards and see a shiny at the back, and then try to act surprised when I know that I've just pulled another enchanted.
And then ultimately shake the foundational bones of our houses when someone pulls an enchanted, and have all of our families kind of wake up. But with that, we
no better way to
one
do
trove.
It, no better way to do it.
Yeah, right. Nathaniel brought a trove though, and he did open 2 legendaries, which was fun. So I think it was like the Kita and the Buzz Lightyear. So always a good time, and always nice to pull 2 legendaries and 8 packs overall. So we had that excitement, but overall we had a couple of best of 3 matches amongst the 4 of us that were able to make it. And I got shellacked. That's the summary for me. I played Nathaniel's Yerple list, and it truly is deadly. I was playing my Amber Sapphire list from last set with obviously some updated tweaks with this set. And yeah, I got steamrolled 0-2 by Nathaniel, and then I played Connor, and we did go 3 games. But he ultimately won our series 2-1. But he was trying out some new cards and some emerald cards, as he does. But I think he was just primarily building a fun deck to see how it works. And ultimately, I'm sure he'll move back to what he's enjoyed during his Set Champs, more recent Set Champs routes or settings. And and maybe revert back to his beloved Emerald Sapphire. But he said, I have no idea what I'm going to run. I just built this deck to just try it out and see if it's fun. And he played it really well, so we had a good time with that as well. I was not able to play against Evan. You being the host, as you are well aware, I think it happened to you too. You just get distracted by your own children. And so my children wanted to be a part of it, and usually when that's the case, Dad has to kind of take a step aside and entertain the children for a little bit and then step back in. And with that, we weren't able to get 3 full matches in, but the other guys were, and they had a good time as well. So it was a lot of fun. I really cherish getting together. The 2 that I've missed, it was a little bit of a bummer that I have not been able to make it, but it's been nice getting back together the last 2 sets. We kind of get together once per set, I would say, and we obviously want to try and do it more often. And it's truly fun getting together as the 5 of us, just playing. Really not in a super competitive scene, just trying out maybe some new cards in our lists that we just want to try out, and get that, that repetition overall, and I value that, and I cherish that, and it was a lot of fun. So you were missed, but hopefully the next time we'll find a date where all 5 of us can get together and just hang out, just guys being dudes, slapping cardboard on the table. So overall, a good time.
Was Connor playing any of his strange things to make sure nothing on the board could quest ever?
I didn't see one, but that doesn't mean it wasn't in his list. No, he noticed over the last weekend, he saw a list with the new Buzz Lightyear, the legendary Buzz Lightyear. So he was just trying out to see if it worked. Like all things that aren't super meta, sometimes it worked and other times it was very conditional and it didn't really work. So, but that's kind of how Connor is. He likes to try 3 or 4 cards every night that we get together to see if it works. And then ultimately, I think that's what keeps us on our toes, because we have no idea what he ends up running truly until he shows up at a set champs and surprises me with a Hufflepuffs and Woozles. So I don't know, maybe he's saving the strange things for when set champs truly is in action. But yeah, it was fun to see the Buzz Lightyear. I have not seen it really at all in my play testing, so it was cool to see that, the cycling of the actions in a different way, with that ability, as well as the buff ability whenever you play in action with a Buzz Lightyear out on the field. So yeah, it was nice to see something different, and I think that's kind of the purpose when we try and get together, whether or not we do our own personal sealed or our theme nights or just core, but testing things out. It was fun to see that. But no strange things, to answer your question.
Well, darn. Next time, I'm sure we'll see that one come out as well, just to make sure that he's the only one that can quest ever in the game. Heffalumps and Woozles 4 of, Strange Things 4 of, John Silver 4 of, probably some Milo Thatches and some Basils, so nothing can ever stick to the board. Yeah, that seems about right up the same alley he's been on in the past. So it's a good strategy for anybody that wants to try it. Don't let your opponent quest; they can't get to 20. Simple as that. That's
sure thing.
I am sad I missed out. Obviously, want to be there, but like I mentioned at the top of the podcast, we were traveling this weekend, and so our house was in a pretty big state of chaos last night. So I needed to be here to help, deal with some of the chaos and help quiet some of it down, kind of settle us back in at home after a long weekend away, and yeah, it was nice to be home. But again, like I said, I missed being there in person with y'all, because it always is a good time. It's even better when we pulled Enchanteds, and next time we're going to have to open some packs, and we'll have to find a booster box or a case or a handful of troves to open together so we can all partake.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my goal. I definitely want to open product the next time we get together. I didn't ask you, though. Do your kids travel well? Was the travel experience overall okay with your little ones?
Yeah, as I've mentioned many times before, my wife is a rock star, so that is crucial part number 1 to a successful trip. and our kids do travel very well. We do our best to minimize screen time for our toddler, and use it in very specific situations where we just need them to, sit quietly and be still. And airplanes is one of those situations. So they got ample screen time on each of the flights, one out, one back. And then our littlest, our 1-year-old, he did quite well, just keeping him entertained, giving him things to play with and pull off and throw on the ground and make faces at everybody around us, because it seems like everybody that was around us at least was interested in making faces at a small baby that's giggling at them. So that helps a lot. So thank you to, if anybody happens to be listening to this that was sitting around us on the flight, thank you for engaging with our littlest baby and making sure that they are giggling with us. You do not know how impactful it is just to help turn the tides of even something that might have been shifting a little bit, and then all of a sudden they start giggling again, and we're right back on track. My nervous system calms down a little bit, and I can get them distracted again, despite the throwing of all the toys and bottles and bottle covers and just everyone that picked things up for us as well on the flight as they got flung around in the 3-seat the 2-row radius either side of us. Thank you to that as well. And again, my wife is an absolute rock star, so she can juggle the kids and make sure that they are taken care of and they're entertained. And I do my best to try to take as much burden off her shoulders as possible, but and I just try to learn from her as she goes about her amazing work with the kiddos. So it's always a learning process for me. I'm always a growth process. So next time I'll be even more engaged, and I have some new strategies in mind to be able to keep the littlest and the toddler, for that matter, engaged with activities throughout the flight. I think next time we're actually going to try reading to them a little bit more. I think that'll be helpful. That seemed to work. I figured out that little snippet of activity at the tail end of our second flight, and I thought, man, I wish I would have found this at the beginning of the first flight so I could have used this. But they seemed pretty interested in the pictures and the books and just whispering the words in their ear, directly in their ear, because it's so loud on the airplanes. I think it provided some grounding for the kiddo on the flight. So that's one thing I'm going to try next time, is a little bit more intentional reading to them, so they can kind of engage a little bit more directly rather than just free playing all over the place. But yeah, they traveled great. The flights were fine. We were not delayed. We were on time. We touched down early, even a little on both ends. And our bags were not lost. We got all of our stuff, and the check-in process, everything went smoothly. So yeah, all in all, a great travel weekend. No complaints from my end. We had plenty of snacks. We had plenty of drinks. We had plenty of help. So I'm looking forward to the next opportunity to travel, because I just kind of have the wanderlust bug and I love it. So can't wait to travel again soon as we head through 2026.
Yeah, that's awesome. We actually have a trip to Disneyland in 2 or 3 weeks very soon. So although we were able to travel over spring break with our boys, so we went through the first round with both boys on a plane, and we have a better idea, but this trip is a little bit longer, about an hour and a half longer, so we'll just have to keep them entertained. But I will echo, we limit the screen time too, but you kind of have to in that situation, and odds are, at least with my boys, at some point they're going to fall asleep in their seat, whatever movie they're watching, so that's nice. And once they get that settled down and they get the lure of oh my gosh, we get free food on the plane, they were very much jazzed about that, and so they got to pick the snacks that they want. So yeah, I'm glad it went well, because it can be very, very stressful. But as long as you're kind of in tandem with your partner, the system eventually works itself out. As long as you make it there safe and your bags are there and good to go and not damaged, it's kind of all you're really hoping for. And but yeah, I'm glad it went well. I was definitely thinking of you over the weekend, because I know how that can go with young kids, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt we were frazzled by the end of it, because it's traveling with kids, so that it's obviously going to happen. But making as light of the situation as you can, and just trying to calm your nervous system down, however you need to get through the trip, and that's how we succeeded. And no judgment for me at all for anybody that does screen time on airplanes for their kiddos, because it is truly a wonder if when the kiddo is preoccupied and you don't need to entirely focus on them because they're buckled into their seat and they're focused on something and not screaming and crying at you. And that is really ultimately the goal, to keep everybody's nervous system at an even keel in that situation. So let's talk about some CCQ lists. There's an Infinity CCQ over in California, and I believe there was one in Europe as well. Mac, is that right? And were you able to find some deck lists that you saw from the weekend?
So I have the overall lists on my second screen here. I can kind of run through the top maybe four. I won't pull up the exact lists, but we can talk about what they were from an Infinity side. And
Sure.
there are been some newer trends from the first week, which is great, and it's not just dogs on steroids. So yeah, we can run through those. One was in San Diego and the other one was in Europe. Let me pull it up here. I think the other one was in Belgium, somewhere there.
What I was interested to see was I did look at the winning deck list in San Diego, and it was. Should we start there? Start with a San Diego event. So that was Lore Gains, who's a YouTube creator and plays a lot of interesting decks, but pulled it out with an Amber Steel kind of princessy mid-range Akud build. I don't know what to really call it. It seems like maybe it's the new Steel Song, if you will. But he wasn't playing A Whole New World, which was very interesting for that color combination. He was still drawing plenty of cards in the one game that I was able to catch. So clearly not an issue there, and probably a good idea not to give your opponent card draw in that situation then when you're getting your one-sided card draw. But it seemed like he was cheating out a lot of ink and singing a lot of songs and drawing a lot of cards and removing a lot of characters from his opponent's board when I was watching the list go. So the list seemed to really run smoothly for him, and he piloted it very well. Kudos to him for getting the invite to NA Continentals now, and so he does not need to grind through the LCQ process. He just now has access to the final stage tournament of the Continental season. So it was really interesting gameplay to watch. It seems like Infinity decks really are super powered decks with the unfair things that each of the decks are able to do. And I was actually quite surprised that Amber Steel pulled it out when there was a Ruby Sapphire deck in the top cut, because when I looked at the top cut, I think it was like 5 or 6 Amber Emerald Dogs decks, which I feel like Ruby Sapphire Infinity lists should handle quite all right. I'll defer to you as the Ruby Sapphire guru of the two of us, but I have to think that there's enough removal tools and enough options that are big enough to get past the Under the Seas that usually should not be an issue for Ruby Sapphire to pull that out. And then Amber Steel and even Emerald Steel, which probably was the big bugaboo for the Ruby Sapphire deck. Maybe that's what they lost to, but of those, I think 7 or 6 of those matchups are favorable for Ruby Sapphire, and then just Emerald Steel might be 50-50 or play draw disparity. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on the top cut there and the finalists?
Yeah. So, you mentioned the winner, Steel Song. Let's start there, mid-rangey. I thought it was very interesting, too, because the first weekend we had seen a lot of the Whole New World variants, to your point. But this one was primarily focused on, it had one random copy of Beyond the Horizon, which came in very, very clutch in the finals in one of the games. But the other one the other source of card draw, or one of their primary sources of card draw, was the aerial boost, the boost aerial, the ethereal voice. And due to the fact that this list has 20 songs, odds are, as soon as you boost that aerial, you're almost guaranteed to draw an additional card every turn. So that's ultimately what won him the game. Was that was that Ariel, and using that one cost Aurora to then quest and cheat out princesses, because there are a lot of princesses in this list too. It was like a princess song list for sure. With Aurora, you had the Ariels, you had Rapunzel, so like you had a lot of these important princesses and singers specifically, and then also, if you didn't have the Aurora, you had the other one drop Cinderella. And I as I was watching the match, because I did watch it back, like Steel Song, the one drops, those 8 one drops are incredible in that list. Holy cow! Like you can't go wrong. It feels like you're either cheating out ink with the Aurora, or you have a one cost 3 singer that can immediately sing Akud or Let the Storm Rage On the next turn. So like you can't go wrong with those one drops, and that was really cool. But to your point about like, what was it? I think you said 5 out of the top 8 were dogs lists, or a variation of the Infinity Dogs list. Some of them might have had the Snow Forts in there as well, right? That Snow Fort build that was buffing strength with the Mulan and what have you. What I thought was really interesting was that the winner had 4 bare necessities in their list. And that song, for those of you who don't remember, it's a 2-cost song. Chosen opponent reveals their hand and discards a non-character card of your choice. And what I noticed, and what I would assume in a lot of those dog matchups, is you can snipe a Snow Fort right away, or if they end up running a Chromacon, you can snipe that, or an Under the Sea. So there's a lot that you can take advantage of when it comes to using the bare necessities in that specific list. Additionally, the other thing that I noticed was his finals opponent was not dogs. His finals opponent was a Emerald Steel discard. So the discard lists are starting to make an entrance. There was Diablo in that list. So like I kind of alluded to last week, look out, because Diablo, you shouldn't lose sight of that card, and it made it all the way to the finals. So those pesky little discard decks, the Emerald Steel of old, people I think are starting to work it out. Ultimately, that list is a control list by nature. And so as we kind of see the trends that move forward, you see the aggressive decks kind of become popular first. Then you have the mid-range start to take over, and then the control lists. So it doesn't surprise me that we're starting to see the control list, and that being the Emerald Steel that made it all the way to the finals. So yeah, Ryan, what are your thoughts on maybe seeing something different like a discard, because that's something that wasn't popular the first weekend?
Yeah, discard didn't really show up very well in the first weekend. I think it definitely has a place in the meta. I think there's definitely room for it to kind of engage with things. Just like you mentioned, though, it really is a control list at heart. It just plays really, really cheap characters in that control list. And so it needs to figure out what the meta truly looks like to be able to tech in the appropriate control tools and know when and how to deploy those tools effectively to beat each matchup. And so it'll take some time for that one to really, that deck list or that deck archetype to come to fruition. I do think that there might be a world, though maybe there's too much card draw just in general in the game now, where like that Amber Emerald discard list might become popular, where you can really burn out your opponent's hands like constantly with You Have Forgotten Me and Sudden Chill and Ursula Deceiver of all singing that, and the Ursula Deceiver and Mowgli, and I think there's a Daisy Duck, and I think there's a Emerald 3 or 4 cost character Chip. There's a Chip and a Daisy Duck that both discard a card on play, playing the Prince John to the board, and then you have Bruno's, and you have, if you want to, you could go to the Snowboarder Mickeys. Like you could really go, you could do the Pumbaa in that one as well from set 11. Like there's a lot of discard options available if you want to slot them all into the same deck list for Amber and Emerald, and that can get out of hand pretty quickly. So that I think there's a world where that might sneak into. The discard archetype, though, I don't think it really is going to take off like it did pre-rotation. I mean, pre-rotation there was Amethyst Emerald discard, there was Emerald Steel discard, and then the Amber Emerald discard was the three like main deck combinations for that. I don't think those are going to all see play again, and I think discard will be a much smaller portion of the meta, just because there's so many powerful things you can do with all different ink colors now after 4 additional sets have been added to the Infinity meta game, that I think people have found other really powerful things to do, namely play dogs. Basically, just play a Snowfort dogs list and Under the Sea everything with your extra strength characters, and then just run away with the game through that pathway. So I think that there's other strong things to do that people are not going to gravitate towards discard for that reason. And if they were going to play a control list, they'll probably try to play something more like a Ruby Sapphire list or a Ruby Amethyst list, just to be able to consistently draw cards and remove threats from the board in those lists, rather than the discard list that would be in the same like control archetype as well. I've been wrong before, so maybe I'm going to be extremely wrong again, but I do think that there's enough card draw as well, just across the board in Amber and Amethyst and Emerald even, to get over the hump of getting your deck burned out by a discard list. So I think there's pathways back into the game for those lists, and I think that for that reason that discard isn't quite as strong, because the card draw options are so strong and so numerous in multiple ink colors. So I think that's where we'll be at for the foreseeable future. I'm very interested to see how Dortmund and Indianapolis both go in the next, is it month? They're both happening next month.
Yep, and see how June for sure
those tournaments end up, just because it'll be very interesting to see on a very large scale what the Infinity metagame looks like. But nonetheless, it's great to see these lists coming out. It's great to see a variety of lists finding success, and I can't wait to see what new ink color combination wins the tournament next weekend, or the weekend after that, or the weekend after that. Even as we get into the DLC season here. So let's talk about your favorite red blue Infinity, and let's kind of go through what that deck list looks like. Was there any like interesting tech inclusions that list has that you haven't thought of before? Or is there some play style disparities there, or what are your thoughts on the red blue list that did well at the Infinity CCQ out at the Enchanted Citrus Clash in San Diego?
Yeah, so out of like the top-ish cut, I don't know, top 32 maybe, out of like the 3 or 4 red blue lists that I was looking at and observed, a majority of them were still the DKP Shark build, like a variation of that, playing out the actions, cheating out lore with Shark as much as you can, and you can try and see the variety, especially with looking at the results of the previous weekend, testing out what cards still slot into that, especially with Here I'm Gone, how you get your card draw, and what we can sub in and out there, like whether or not the Cinderella Dream Come True makes sense as a viable 4-drop, or if it's just truly you're going to stick with 4 Gramatalas and 4 how far it goes, and then run it for there. And then what's your top end look like? Does Sisu still make sense because of the Snow Fart, and it's a little bit harder to kind of get that board wipe out there? In addition to, or is your top end gonna be like a Maldragon or even a Leviathan? Is that viable? So I think people are trying to still test and figure out the ratios of the top end, but that was still the popular list. However, in the Citrus Clash, there were 2 lists that were an items variant. And again, the items version that we all know and love when we were testing back in set 8 is that one was very much like the Infinity Stone Gauntlet list. Like if you were to obtain all the Infinity Stones, good luck trying to stop that red-blue list, especially with the Maurice's Workshop online and you had that draw engine cycling. I think Ed Chu was one of the two that ran this items list. The one thing that was different or newer, due to the fact that there are now cheaper items out there since rotation. One of them being like I forget the name of it, and I don't want to look it up just in case my computer crashes. But it's like like the ice trap, and it's a way to banish an item. So that
Frozen
was
trap.
something. What was it called?
Frozen trap.
There it is. Yeah, and that's I think one that people are trying to test out right now in preparation for DLCs, just to see like what item removal you can have in that items list. That
Hidden trap. I'm sorry. Hidden trap.
hidden trap. Thank you. That isn't a hideaway, and is more an item based one. So I think people are trying that out. And again, trying to play with those ratios. But the other kind of spicy card in that list now was the 2-drop Oswald, not focusing on, or strictly focusing on turn 2 ramp, and truly cheating out free items as much as possible with the Oswald. I think the list still ran 4 T-Pos as an additional 2-drop option, but I don't think Sail the Azurite Sea was in that list. So it was very much Oswald was the card you wanted to get down, and then every time you inked after that, you would just cheat out all these free items, and then you run the closer with the Lucky Diamond Big Tamatoa combo, right? So one of the lists made top 8, which was interesting, and it was a list of like 20 to 25 items, so you can tell how that gauntlet show goes. So we'll see. We'll see if that's ultimately what they want to do, or if they'll end up removing the Oswald and go back to the standard ramp on 2, and then go for kind of the hybrid control with items, like maybe back to like the 16 to 18 items in that list, and have a little bit more control cards as a result to pair with that. Don't know if that'll end up being it, but it was nice seeing the items, not only from a like red-blue side, but just like those control Infinity lists are starting to come out and make their presence known, something that we really hadn't seen a lot of in the first weekend. But that was the Citrus Clash. A lot of dogs with a couple Steel Song, the discard, and the couple of red-blue items lists and DKP shark-based lists that I saw out there. Anything else you want to discuss on that specific CCQ? Congratulations to Lore Gains again. I wanted to echo your previous point. I know he's popular in the community, so excited to see him in Continentals. Anything else from this specific one?
No, I'm really interested to hear more about the one that happened over in Belgium, because I was not following that one very closely. So I'm curious to see and hear about the results from that too. Do you have those?
Yeah,
pulled up
this
as
one,
well?
I didn't see the stream, and I don't really know if there was a stream, to be honest. But speaking of DKP, the world champ was in attendance, and it was like a 75-player tournament, and he repped his famous list that he has crafted, and he made it all the way to runner-up. He lost in the finals, but still amazing performance by the world champ. This list, or these set of deck lists, I'm looking at it now, there was one Agro, Amber, Emerald list in the top 8. All the rest, there were 4 Ruby Amethysts in the top 8. So this one was very much a different player base field. We saw Ruby Amethyst. The runner-up was the Shark, was DKP Shark. In the top 4, we saw green purple evasives. In top 16, there was Blurple. But truly, out of all the decks on that have been submitted so far for this tournament, I would say 50% of the top 16 were the Ruby Amethyst, and specifically the Ruby Amethyst Boost Bounce deck, where you can boost all of those Scrooges and the 1-drop Hercules, and then eventually bounce them back, and now you have a million cards in your hand, bouncing them back specifically with the snake and the fox from the days of old. So I am starting to see that this might be this is, I think, more evidence of my first prediction that Ruby Amethyst is a true contender and something to look out for if you follow the pro scene, and specifically as we see these two Affinity DLC events coming up. I think there's going to be a lot of Ruby Amethyst popularity showing up here, and who knows, maybe that'll ultimately be the one that takes the cake.
I'm really curious about that Ruby Amethyst take, because we saw at the Enchanted Citrus Clash a ton of dogs lists, an Amber Steel and an Emerald Steel, which usually Ruby Amethyst has a favorable matchup into all of those in color combinations. So I'm curious to see if that actually holds true across both continents, or if it's just a locality thing, where the Ruby Amethyst players maybe are just more local to the Belgium area or focused there. Was there anything that you kind of deduced from the crowd that you saw, the deck list that you saw from the Belgium tournament, that maybe Ruby Amethyst had a favorable matchup that they were preying upon, or was it just kind of a people like Ruby Amethyst, and Ruby Amethyst is fun to play because it's a lot of just good cards, just play good cards and play Ruby Amethyst?
Yeah, that's a good question. And to answer your question, I think we have to go back to what a previous guest of the podcast has said before. I think both Christian and Ernie have said this about kind of the United States, North America meta versus the European meta, especially pre-rotation. It was mentioned during that time that Europe were kind of the masters of the mid-range, and for some reason Ruby Amethyst, right? Like they, besides like Ed Chu, who was famous for Ruby Amethyst, right? Like you saw a lot of the mid-range come from Europe, but then in North America, they were more the control-based field. You saw a lot more Ruby Sapphire, and then in talking with our really good locals here in the community, sure, you might see a lot of low-cost one-drops in these dogs snow fort lists, which you might think that these are aggressive lists. But in talking with our locals here, like, no, we should view this as a control list. And it's not surprising to me that in the Citrus Clash, we had a lot of this Amber Emerald dogs snow fort build in the top 16 because it should be viewed as a control list. And then you saw a lot of these mid-range with Ruby Amethyst lists in Europe. And I think kudos to you in making this point. You know, when we've started talking about Infinity, like you made kind of the reference that people are going to go back to what they were used to before and just want to play those decks that they missed before. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. Those people just getting their hands on their old cards and playing those lists and getting used to what they're all about. Ultimately, these players that are attending the DLCs might not run these same lists, that being Ruby Amethyst. They might run Red Blue, for example, or Dogs or whatever. However, getting reps on like what potentially your opponents might run on those specific deck lists, on these kind of lower cost, these mid-tier, not as high stakes tournaments, there's a lot of value in that in preparation for a truly high stake tournament at a DLC. So that's what I noticed for sure, was kind of each region playing what they loved and were previously known for pre-rotation with Fabled.
That's really interesting, because I do think the Ruby Amethyst list is very good. I mean, I've glanced at a couple of lists, not necessarily from that event, but from previous events as well. And it seems like it's highly competitive. It has a lot of tools. That the old Ruby Amethyst bounce package plus removal options plus Be Prepared plus libraries, like all of these things just fit together so well that it just makes perfect sense that it may find a lot of success at a DLC level event where you're really looking for consistency. And I think that Ruby Amethyst list is the king of consistency in terms of ample card draw options and tools, and it can test board early, so you can't really necessarily get blown out by aggro lists as easily. You definitely can get overwhelmed by some control lists that are just playing larger, more cost-effective characters than you. That being said, you still kind of get the board early, and still you can kind of race a little bit with some of the lists that are out there too. So I think it's a highly flexible list, a highly consistent list, and I think I do agree that I think it will perform very well on a DLC level event, where you need to prioritize consistency at those large events, because there's going to be a lot of rounds of gameplay, and you can ride a hot streak as long as you want, but a hot streak isn't going to last 15 rounds. Like, that's just not going to happen. Or maybe it's 16 in order to get through the top 32. So yeah, I do think Ruby Amethyst will find some success at that level, and I'm excited to see these DLC events happen and follow along from the small, medium, and large screens that I have accessible to me to be able to follow those matches into the future.
Yeah, and last point I want to make, because you've made the point about like running hot and having a hot streak, especially at a DLC. Like, sometimes it's how it works when we've talked to our friends that attend multiple DLCs. Like, sometimes you just don't draw the cards that you want at a DLC. You could be the best player in the world, but you need the cards in order to play, and you're playing other really good players. So it's hard to stay consistent, but those who do stay consistent are the ones that see success at these events. One other point I want to make, and I recall it might have been the first week after on a stream or whatever for the first weekend, but I thought it was a very interesting point by one of the casters, and I don't remember which one it was, but with Infinity, the player that won during this interview made the point that, like, we have so many cards available in this Infinity format, like 3,000 to 4,000 cards now, and you're trying to compile that in a 60 card deck list. And so that means every card in your list is important. There's no fillers. Like, every card has a purpose, and there are answers for almost every opponent that you have in your list. So with that, especially when it comes from a control side, like, there's always going to be an answer. Whatever card you play, be prepared to have an answer until eventually someone runs out of gas. So it's like, we'll see how the DLCs ultimately go, and I would not take these two results as like, oh my gosh, Ruby Amethyst is amazing because there were half of the top 16 was Ruby Amethyst, and oh my gosh, dogs were over here and half of the top 16 were dogs. Like, truly, like, every list that is in that S to A tier will have a chance to win the whole thing. It's just a matter of what cards you draw on that specific matchup, because there is going to be an answer to every card that is played, or there is potentially an answer to every card that is played, as opposed to like in Core Constructed, where you might have like 5 cards that are like filler, and you're like, I don't know if these are actually going to be good, but like, I know my first 55 are really good in key, but maybe not all 60 of them. So that's something to keep in mind, is like, these are the most powerful. And watching the first 2 weekends, I understand why rotation is important as someone who has not been a part of a TCG. Like, I see the value in rotation and cycling cards out. Otherwise, you're just going to have this either ultimate control list, and matches are going to take 3 hours long, which is what they don't want to do because there's a time limit, or you need to cycle them out, get fresh cards in, and just have the meta always change. And then we have this fun little side Infinity that we can run every once in a while, as opposed to having it be the thing consistently. So I want that for those of you who will be observing the DLCs coming up, it'll be haymaker after haymaker, and I, for one, am going to be very excited watching those streams for sure, because I think that's very much in my wheelhouse.
I can hear Lorcana Villain screaming on the call right now, and I'm excited for every moment of that. There's one other Core Constructed piece I wanted to talk about today before we wrap the episode, and that would be the 2 new deck lists, actually, so 2 more things. First one being like a supers list. We talked about toys last week and a couple of different variants of it. In Wilds Unknown, they also Ravensburger also introduced a lot of supers synergies. There's also a handful of supers from from Winterspell and maybe from Whispers as well, but I think mostly Winterspell, that have some of the super synergy super tags on them as well. So that's interesting little synergy that they are packing into 2 sets in a row then. And the Ruby Amethyst list, I think, is what I was interested in talking about with regard to supers. Do you have it, and do we want to share it on the screen, or do we just want to chat about it? What do you think?
I got it up right now.
Oh, man. Look at you, right on cue.
There we go.
So this is not my own making. This is Lorcana Decklists. If you follow other content creators, Lorcana Decklists was, I think it was part of the Articast, which was another podcast that was running previously. But this list, I think, has something close to 30 supers in it. And the big payoff of the list is the 5-cost inkable Mr. Incredible, the legendary from Wilds Unknown. Mr. Incredible, super strong, 5-cost inkable, 6 strength, 4 willpower, shift for 3, quest for 1. 2 abilities. First ability, this character gets +2 strength for each other character you have in play, so it scales up very quickly. And the second ability is Let's Do This. Whenever one of your super characters challenges another character, draw a card. So that's the big payoff for having all of the supers synergy in the deck and being able to leverage Mr. Incredible Super Strong as a card draw engine, as well as this very intimidating and daunting large strength character. There's the other supers synergy is the 6-cost uninkable Frozone. Has a 6/4 quest for 2. And has Rush, and when you play this, the ability of when you play this character, if you have another super character in play, you may exert chosen opposing character. So it has some instant and forced board interaction, which is nice, on a 6th strength body, which is also very nice. So those are the 2 really big payoffs for the super list. Otherwise, it just plays as a standard, really strong, curve out, tempo Ruby Amethyst list. Isis Vanderchill on 4 after you play like a Roller Bob or a Cheshire Cat on 3, as well as the Negaduck on 2 or the Liquidator on 2 or 1 if you're on the draw. You just have these large characters. This is the Negaduck, this super for 2-cost inkable quest for 1. That just kind of stall the board, right? You have, if you play Mr. Incredible on 1, Negaduck on 2, and now your opponent has to think twice before questing on their second turn or third turn, because if you shift Mr. Incredible, you can then draw 2 cards on turn 3 while removing 2 of your opponent's characters, presumably with your large high-strength characters. So a lot of interesting cards here. One card that's really notable is the 5-cost inkable Mrs. Incredible. We may have talked about it on the podcast before. Mrs. Incredible, super stretchy. 5-cost inkable, 5/6 quest for 1 with 1 ability that is a choice. At the start of your turn, you may choose 1. Either this character gains evasive until the start of your next turn, or this character gains +1 lore this turn. So make it evasive or give it extra questing power, which both of those are useful in their own rights. And it is also a super and a hero, so it does have synergy with the Mr. Incredible, so you can still draw cards off of it. It's a very large stat line at 5/6. It handles a lot of meta threats very cleanly. It can contribute to the evasive battle. This is a very flexible card, which is very on brand with the Mrs. Incredible from the movies, The Incredibles. And so otherwise it's just a very strong purple mid-range list with very high strength Ruby characters. And draws a lot of cards and wins the board and quests out. I mean, it's not like it's not a super aggressive list. I think there might just be 10 2-questers, 12 14, 15, 14 2-questers with the Genie, the Demona, the Frozone, and then the Mrs. Incredible if you so choose. What are your thoughts on this supers list? Do you think that there is, is this viable, or is this just a pipe dream? What do you think, Mac?
I think it looks fun. I don't think it's, S or A tier, but I think it's something, especially what we learned, I think a lessons learned for the 3 of us, me, you, and Nathaniel, when we were prepping for Winterspell. We were expecting all these high, S tier lists, whatnot, and prepare yourself for the S tier lists. Otherwise, if you want to find success. And then we ran into tournaments that where every single deck list was unique. So like this is one where I see someone can just show up and run a list similar to this, because the theme for Wilds Unknown is that there are more thematic options as a result of this specific set. One of them being the supers, or more specifically that's new with this set are the just Incredibles in general, right? So that's what we're primarily trying to highlight. And sprinkled into your previous point, a couple other supers in the Liquidator and the Negaduck that are also has the super tag that takes advantage of the Mr. Incredible draw power with whenever they challenge, right? So ultimately you have your Demonis too to potentially refill your hand, and then the items with the Woodchuck Guidebook and potentially the library as well. So, but I think this is a fun list for people to try out. Definitely on brand, like I was trying to make, like on brand of the set championship vibe. Wouldn't be surprised if this is, if this rolls up and we see this on your first round matchup, you'll see a random Ruby Amethyst Mr. Incredible list as kind of the one drop in that Ruby Mr. Incredible. So I think it's fun. I wish I had all the cards to try it out myself, because I think I'm branching more into I don't want to play everything that's super powerful all the time. I think I want to try a lot more of these thematic decks, and this being one of them. But yeah, it's just fun. I'm glad that it's a part of it, and I'm glad there's a lot more viability. And I think what makes me even more excited, I think a good benefit, although there is a downside to it, with this being set 12, it's kind of on the early pathway to rotation 3, like 16 months from now. But I think what's fun or beneficial, kind of the flip side, glass half full perspective, is for rotation 2, a lot of these cards are staying around, especially the supers, right? So like this is something that you can continue to test out. Thankfully, you'll have your Genie and Elsa removals. Get those out of the game, please. But other than that, there are a lot of other cards here that will still be viable. Like I would say 80% of the list is still going to be here. So it's could be here to stay as long as you find the viable 4 and 5 drop replacements when the Genie and Elsa are ultimately rotated out, right? So yeah, I love this list. The Incredibles, I think, as I've alluded to before, one of my favorite Pixar movies of all time. So I definitely want to try it out. Especially like this is a list to our point, like playing the physical cards in hand. This seems like a list that would be really fun to play in person, not just online. But yeah, I like it. Something that I think suits my play style as well as testing out, because it's Ruby and I like the red color in this lovely, lovely game of Lorcana.
Well, Mac, if you really want to play this deck, I think our friend group can definitely cobble together all the cards for you. So we should get on that initiative if that is something you're truly interested in. The other list then that I wanted to cover was like a robots list. Do you have one of those ready to go? Yeah, I think a Sapphire Steel.
Give me a second.
Ink color combination for that.
Here.
I've come across a couple of these in playing online, and I will say the 6-drop inkable Omnidroid V11, I think, V.11. V.10. Sorry, V.10. That is very, very annoying to deal with. A 6/6 resist 2 once it gets shifted in on 4 is very annoying to deal with, especially in a Sapphire deck that might be ramping on 2. So you have an Omnidroid on 1, ramp on 2, and then on turn 3 you're playing a 6/6 resist 2 quest for 2 that can sing all the songs and trade with the board, engage with the board. It is a hassle and an annoyance, to say the very least. But yeah, and then it has some extra synergies there with the Syndrome to bring things back from the discard if it happens to end up there for some reason, and all the other robot synergies. One interesting robot synergy that I think you have one opportunity to play it in core, which is this set, is the Baymax from Azurite Sea, which is a really fun card to really burst some lore from a damaged board. namely that 6/6 resist 2 Omni Droid probably is going to be sitting with some damage on it since it's a 6/8 effectively. So take some damage, heal it off with Baymax, and make that Omni Droid even more impossible to get rid of. And then also the Ben card from Azerite Sea as well. That's a 4-cost inkable 4/3 quest for 2 with support. Really interesting to have some extra interaction there where the Ben can soup up some other character, and then you win the board that way while it's questing away too. So some really interesting synergies there, that's for sure. Is this also in your wheelhouse, Mac, or is this kind of a little bit straying too far for the synergy?
Well, it does have blue, but it's definitely not a ramp style deck because you don't see your T-pos and you don't see your sails, for example. This specific list is leaning like heavily in on the Syndrome side of the Incredibles list with the robots for sure, and getting that additional benefit and cheating out that extra lore with that Baymax to your previous point. We had to include this list because I think the trifecta for the Incredibles happened to be in Amethyst, Ruby, and Steel. That's where a lot of what we see the Incredibles list, and then this random alert Syndrome that happens to be in Sapphire, the 4/3, 3-cost inkable that quest for 1 alert. But other than that, that's where we see a lot of these Incredibles are the Steel, Ruby, and Amethyst. But this does look fun. Again, very thematic, and I'm just happy to see thematic lists that are, at least if you draw the right cards, you have a chance, right? That's kind of what I want these lists to be. And it's fun. I think, especially when we're catering to families of Disney, they want to play all their Incredibles cards. They want to play all their robots together, and seeing how they work together and still finding some success in it. I have not tested this one out, though. Again, it looks fun. And I have no idea how good this Omni Droid is, this 6-cost inkable that you were talking about. But I can envision if you do shift it and it has that resist on there, how are you going to get rid of it unless you have a Hades or let it go? Because it's so beefy that you're not going to do much of anything other than that spot removal. So yeah, I can see how this can be quite a bit of a nuisance and a little bit annoying and kind of hard to deal with unless you have that instant spot removal. I don't think you can lose sight on the Syndrome to your previous point. Just again, even if your robots get banished with a spot removal, you're able to return that and then play a robot card for free. And in this specific list, there are a lot of robots. I would have to say it almost looks like half the list is robots. So that's awesome. And then the beloved Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood, makes itself in this list with the now viable 1-drop Sapphire shift option and another way to gain lore through challenging. And then it seems to just have that card draw option because that's the one thing I'm noticing in this list is the struggle for card draw, but not every thematic deck can be perfect, and I guess that's kind of this Achilles heel, but if you want to go for it, this is the deck to play, and it looks like a lot of fun. So, yeah, these look cool. I'm excited to see them and one day hopefully test them out myself.
It should be fun also going forward to see how these type of synergy cards fit into future sets post-rotation as well. I'm very curious about rotation. I want to get through set champ season before we cover that, but it's always in the back of my mind as we're going through set champs and looking at a lot of these cards and evaluating how strong or how not strong they are, what they may look like in a post-rotation setting as well, because rotation 1 resulted in a very powered down format for at least a set or two, and so I'm wondering if rotation 2 is going to have a similar effect on the metagame, or if it's just going to maintain status quo rather than powering things down. But we'll have to wait and see. That's really the gist of it. Just wait and see, and it'll eventually show us what we get to play with. Any other last minute thoughts before we wrap up?
I do want to share my tinfoil hat theory, because you mentioned the Baymax, this armored companion. talking about rotation, if they do reprints or one legendary reprint, I am thinking that this is going to be the Sapphire one, because this is a card that I think is very, very strong, but has been kind of underutilized, and kind of there have been other cards that have kind of taken precedent over it. So that's just, I'm going to say it here now. My Sapphire reprint prediction, if they're going to do the same kind of one legendary reprint with one new legendary for the Attack of the Vine, this is going to be my Sapphire call out, is the Baymax. My other thought was the red Robin Hood. I think the Sharpshooter Robin Hood is also one of those cards that have been underutilized, but still has a rarely really 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 fun effect that could that also isn't overpowered as, for example, like a Maui Half Shark. There's no chance that they're reprinting a Maui Half Shark. I'd be genuinely shocked. I'd love it, but I'd be genuinely shocked if a super, super, super powerful card like that is reprinted, because what they focused on in the previous rotation were the kind of these like legendaries that were there, but the really, really powerful ones kind of just towered over them. And so that's my tinfoil and prediction, is the Robin Hood, Ruby Robin Hood Sharpshooter, and this Baymax Armored Companion. I think there's a lot more to be seen with the Baymax for sure.
While we're on the topic, I will counter your Sapphire prediction. I think maybe Mufasa from Shimmering Skies is a strong candidate, kind of along that same vein of perpetually underutilized, but has a very cool, very strong effect. Maybe it's too strong, but who's to say? We'll have to wait and see. If they take a bunch of ramp options out of the game, and maybe Mufasa is a much more fair card.
Yep.
But again, we'll have to wait and see where things shake out with rotation, and that's for a future podcast. Right now, we have DLC Dortmund, we have DLC Indianapolis, and we have Set Champ season right around the corner and upon us for Wilds Unknown. And I am very excited to see the deck list that filter to the top of the Set Championships metagame. And can't wait to shuffle up real cardboard and play with people once again. With that in mind, thank you for joining us for another episode of Ducktail Dads. You can find our podcast wherever you're listening right now. You can also find us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, whatever other platform you might prefer. We do post videos to YouTube if that's a type of content you enjoy consuming. And we can also follow us on Instagram for some intermittent posting of snippets or deck lists on there as well. We try to engage a little bit there. Wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching, feel free to drop a comment. We'll do our best to respond as soon as we see it. And we'll follow along closely with those engagements as well. Drop us a like if you feel so inclined. And until next time, let's get the duck out of here.